Welcome to Coffee and Geography, where my guests and I geek out about the world and everything on it, discovering that we are all geographers in some way, shape or form. I'm your host, Kit, and my pronouns are they, them or she, her. So settle down with a brew, hit that subscribe or follow button, and enjoy the listen. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Coffee and Geography. Yes, me and this person has just actually sat here. I mean, what has it been now? 12, 13, 40 minutes, and just had a really lovely chat before we pressed record. And we were at risk of actually just going off on one, like with that, and then not forgetting about the recording. So I already know this is going to be a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful chat. So, Amel, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me on your show. Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. I'm very excited to be here, so sorry if I'm a little nervous.
Well, I always say to people, it's completely natural that the guest is nervous, but I don't think, I can speak for myself, but no one is more nervous than the host.
I can imagine.
I want you to feel comfortable and everything like that. So to introduce you, Amel is an early career marine biologist who loves nature and all things marine, especially the UK native oyster and seagrass. Ooh. Their love for the ocean stems from their parents reading books like Don't Eat the Teacher about friendly sharks first day at school, Animal Planet documentaries, and trips to Colchester Zoo to see the Sealions. Now, almost 20 years later, Amel dives in regularly, volunteering with their Scuba club and clean their aquarium. They are a queer person of colour who loves camping, sports, spending time cuddled up with a good book, and their cat, Felix. Your cat's called Felix.
He is the poster boy for, as the name suggests, for the brand. He's the cutest little tuxedo cat.
Tuxedo cat.
And yeah, he's so cute. I can ramble on about him forever. He's my best boy. I love him to bits. But this is not a podcast about cats.
Well, it could be. But I'm sure you've posted pictures of Felix on your Twitter feed, actually. I'm sure you've done that.
He does like to regularly try to join my meetings. He was on one this morning, and then it just typed on the chat like the keyboard splatter as he walks in front of the camera, which is not very professional, but I can't say no to him.
No. Cats just do what they want. We used to have a cat here, and yeah, she would do that whole laying on top of the laptop, laying on top of the keyboard thing. I was like, you will pay attention to me, kid. You will. I know. Yeah, she was a tortoiseshell cat. But unfortunately, we had to rehome her because the kids made her life a living hell.
Oh.
So,
well, yeah, got to put them first, but yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Right. So do you have, because we're recording this evening, do you have a nighttime brew with you while we're recording? Or what do you usually drink when it comes to tea, coffee or whatever?
I've got my 2 bottles of water ready, and then
Awesome.
I have this is going to sound absolutely disgusting, but I have a little tonic of sort of turmeric, ginger, mullein leaf, all good stuff for you that is just sort of, because I was a bit ill over the winter. So I'm very into like plants and what they can do for you. So yeah, I'm just trying to use this to clear everything out of my system, and it's working. So the power of nature. So yeah, seems a bit gross and it's a bit orange, but
well, I came across turmeric in a drink for the first time really when I was living in San Francisco, and I was like, they had like shelves of like kombucha and stuff like this. I was like, turmeric, I know it's a seasoning, and you use it to cook with, but here's a drink. And yeah, it's an acquired taste as a drink, but I didn't mind it. But then I learned about how it's good for you as that kind of drink, and with ginger it's really, really nice, and I'm a big fan of ginger. So yeah, I think it's an acquired taste, but I think there are people listening saying no, Amel, no, that's good. I do a bit of turmeric too.
It is quite nice, and I grew up with my dad swearing by things like lavender and tea tree to cure any ailment you had. Lavender on like cuts and stuff. So yeah, I think a little bit of that is ingrained in me.
In fact, I believe it or not, folks, here's a very, very quick little story. But there was one of my best friends from primary school, and now I only get that like 20, 25 years later that I got the joke. he was an Italian guy, and he said, yeah, I eat olives and garlic like as a snack, right? Olives and garlic as a snack. I was like, oh yeah, why do you do that? Is this an Italian thing? I was like, no, it's really good. And I've never caught a cold off anybody. And I was like, okay. And then I realised that he was probably telling a joke about how the fact that nobody wants to come near him because of his breath.
I can
so
imagine,
I didn't get it.
yeah.
It went right over my head. But olives and garlic are good for your immune system. So, you know, both things can be true. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. Those facts.
I'm still, I don't know what it is about olives, but I still haven't come round to them. I think it's the same as Brussels sprouts. I just don't want to grow up and accept that I'm an adult and I should like these things now. I still push them to the side of my roast dinners.
Well, it depends how you cook them, I suppose. If you, I think roasting them with some salt and pepper, you know, with some olive oil is a bit, you know, is pretty cool. My kids will eat them. My kids will eat Brussels sprouts cooked like that, but not like my mum. Sorry, mum, if you're listening. Not like my mum used to cook them when used to steam or just boil them. Like, no, that is not the way to eat Brussels sprouts.
I agree with you there.
So, welcome to the Geography Cookbook Podcast, everybody. This is I'm your host, Kit, with your co-host, Emil. Right. But okay, I've got a good segue here. I'm going to use it. So, one thing that the place that you're living in is very famous for is condiments such as jam.
Yes.
Did I do that well? Because
yes,
you are in Essex. You come from a place that's not too far away from where I come from Harlow, but you're in Tiptree.
Yes. So we have the jam factory, the world famous jam factory, literally a 5-minute walk from my house. And I actually was lucky enough to do a turtle dove habitat assessment for the company a few weeks ago. So
wow.
Yeah, they're proper into their conservation there and their sustainable farming. So although it always makes me feel a bit bad about my carbon consumption when I'll be somewhere around the world and see a little pot of Tiptree jam, I'm always thinking, oh, I should have brought that with me. Would they have let me get that through customs? But no, yeah. I think they are really trying, and it was a really positive day. And I wasn't on the project then, but last year they did have some sightings, which is amazing, because all my neighbours around here always go on that they used to see all the turtle doves all the time, and I'm a bit too young to remember that. So, yeah,
I never knew this. This is amazing. Oh, it's okay. So tell us a little bit more about that work then that you did with them with the bringing back the turtle doves and whatnot.
So I currently work for the RSPB. My role is quite unique. It was only created the last year or so. So we're called the Greener Thames Trainees, and I am one of 3. There was originally 4 of us, but the other lady on it managed to get a job as assistant warden. I digress. But yeah, it was originally created for people from underrepresented backgrounds trying to get into conservation. And it has been an amazing year. I have done so many things. So I've helped out on this turtle dove project. I have worked with Thames Estuary Partnership doing fish surveys. I'm currently working with the Essex Wildlife Trust on their wild oyster projects. So yeah, I'm proper getting around and trying all these different things, but I'm absolutely loving it and dipping my toes into so many different areas of conservation.
Oh my God, this is so good. Yeah. It sounds like such an amazing project as well. I've just looked at the Tiptree. They've got Tiptree videos, and they actually have a video about the turtle dove thing. So I'm going to put a link to that in the description for people to look at. So that's really, really cool. Yeah. So folks, I'm sure no matter where you are in the UK, you have probably come across, you know, the marmalade, the jam, the lemon curd or something, and it's got like, you know, Tiptree Essex on it, and it's quite famous. You usually will find them in bed and breakfast. I've seen them like all the way up in like the Lake District and stuff like that, in bed and breakfasts up there. So they are quite. So there you go. So Mel, they're pretty much right near the jam factory, and they've been doing this conservation work. Apparently, they've been going since the 18th century. Apparently,
yeah, they're really well established.
Yeah,
and their jam is yummy, so can't complain.
Oh yes, yeah. Yep. Images from the Barnell, so Barnell project with Essex Wildlife Trust, the Turtle Dove Conservation Project, which we worked on with the RSPB, and this was and then they had Yeah, and they were showing people all about, for their virtual open farm day during lockdown. Wow, there is so much to go into here. And we have a lot of geography educators who are listening. So, folks, there is a lot you can learn geography and conservation wise just by visiting the Tiptree Jam website. So I'll stick that on the show notes. So okay. So I really love what's going on this. You said you're lucky to remember the turtle doves when you were growing up and stuff like that. But and I like what you put here, whose beautiful purr nostalgically reminds me of walking to school as a kid. You've mentioned one of your fondest memories is with your nan on your flat balcony in Snaresbrook watching the foxes. Oh,
yeah, it was quite lovely actually, because she passed away last summer, and obviously that's a sad time for the family. But at the funeral, and as you know, we've got quite a lot of young kids in the family, and almost all of us have sort of these similar memories of just sitting on our balcony watching the foxes, and then just as they're reading out a lovely poem, these two foxes run by like a few meters behind us and start playing. And honestly, everyone was in tears. It was so beautiful, and it was like she was still there with us. And I think it's really important in this sector to realise that not everyone's has the opportunity to start bird watching, at 7 years old, or has this traditional route into conservation. So especially like urban wildlife, I think is so amazing how everyone gets these connections in completely different ways, and every single way is valid, is important.
And people listening know I have a real affinity with foxes. I mean, that's what my name Kit comes from, and I've got my little fox here, and I've got my fox thingies on.
Aww.
And it's what I want people to understand as well is exactly what you just said. So for folks who don't know where Snaresbrook is northeast London, so coming out towards the urban fringe of London, but not quite, still very much in London. So we're kind of thinking about Enfield, Loughton, up towards Thayden Boys, Woodford, all that kind of stuff. So it is quite a busy and urban area, not as busy as say inner city London, but it's a very busy area. But there are pockets of green spaces around that area. So it's no surprise to me personally, who knows that area very, very well, that there are, you would see foxes. But from the flat balcony, just to see them playing, on the estate, that's just, nature finds its way, and foxes get everywhere as well, which is what
they do. They're so lovely, yeah.
So, which is absolutely beautiful. So, so is that your patch then, like family wise? Is it like kind of the northeast London coming into Essex? Is that your family's patch, or have you born and bred as kind of like North London, South Middle Essex?
I'm Essex, yeah, born and bred. I got the Gemma Collins accent. So sorry to everyone listening out there. I know it can be quite grating, and when I proper go into it and start saying words like peg and cream, oh my god, I shouldn't have said that. But yeah, Essex born and bred, and
it's got context. I'll leave it in. I'm not going to even try to explain it. I've my accent's become a bit more refined, but you know what? I'm refining my accent because, of course, I'm changing my voice rep and all that kind of stuff. But I'll just drop my old Essex.
Yeah, slip
so
into it.
I'll just slip back. So this is like what I talk to my parents sometimes. And it's just like, I mean, I don't know how this is going to come across on a podcast, but people must like, what is Kit doing? They sound so different now. But oh god, leave it out. Come on, let's just get on with it.
Mate.
Come on, mate. Oh no, you got two Essex people now going at it.
Oh no,
sorry, folks.
Absolute mayhem.
See, there you go, mayhem.
It's carnage. We should be selling strawberries at like 6 o'clock in the morning, not be recording a podcast.
Oh goodness, how do I move on from here? Right, okay. So yeah, we'll go on to this next bit because it is really, really, I think it has a bit of Essex of it. All right, so you say here that you grew up in urban areas, but you've always felt a connection with the natural world. I felt that too, even though growing up in Harlow, in Essex, I I really loved the fact that it was built as a new town and there were pockets of green spaces around. And it's a shame that development meant like Harlow's been developing inwards because it's restricted by the London Greenbelt and whatnot. But I loved that. I loved walking back from school and walking through the woods or walking through the fields, get home, even though my school was pretty much 15 minutes away from the town centre. So that was pretty lovely. But then what you've put here is that whenever you're out walking, you always come home with pockets full of cool rock shells and bones. And this is amazing. I think you picking up this quote is very Essex of you, right? You always like to think of this quote from Alice Walker, which is, I think it pisses God off if you walk by the colour purple in a field somewhere and don't notice it.
I think I must have been a magpie in another life, because I stepped out into my back garden today and picked up a rock and was like, oh, that's really nice. Don't know where that came from. My whole garden's covered in stones. It's probably just came out a bag somewhere. But I'm terrible for it. I would have shells in my blazer pocket, and I still do now. All of my work coats will have little bits of sea glass in them. And yeah, I have to have a sort out every 6 months or so because I just have too many rocks to display now. So if anyone can help me identify what types of rocks these are brilliant. But I do have quite a few.
Marine biologist, not a geologist. They might intersect sometimes, but yeah. In fact, a friend of mine, I'm going to give her a shout out. Kim, who lives in a wonderful family friend who lives in Santa Cruz. She loves collecting sea glass and making like really amazing cool art out of it. So that's a very good excuse to give a shout out to the lovely, wonderful Kim. Miss you, Kim. We love you. But yeah, she'll understand that compulsion to go out and collect those bits. And my who you got to meet very briefly, my eldest, comes home with bunches of shingle, rocks, and everything in their pockets. The mini geographer. So I don't know. So your work then with the RSPB. So you say you absolutely love scuba diving. So I'm gonna ask a bit. They seem like they're kind of like exclusive to each other, like the RSPB with birds and stuff like that, and then you've got your marine biology and scuba diving. But is there any way that those two worlds collide? And actually, no, it's really important that you've got work with bird conservation and marine biology.
Yeah, 100%. They totally overlap. I mean, it did take me a few months to find a marine biologist in the RSPB, and I don't think there's any in Essex as far as I'm aware of. They tend to stick to Scotland. They've got much wilder coast than we do, but yeah, it definitely connects. And I think a lot of the work we do with the seabirds is so important because, again, species like the kittiwakes are declining so rapidly, and they're such beautiful birds. And I had the opportunity to go and see some last summer when I went up to Bempton Cliffs, and they're spectacular. And you have all these brilliant species for engagement, like the puffins and their beautiful bright orange bills. And yeah, they're worlds that completely overlap. And I do feel so privileged when I'm scuba diving to get a little glimpse of their world. And yeah, just when I'm 20 meters under the water, and I can imagine that's a solitude they get when they can dive to go and collect their dinner, and there's just no one else around them but miles of open ocean. And yeah, I think that's the closest I'd ever personally get to flying, is when I'm diving. So yeah, a little glimpse through a seabird's eyes.
Wow, I never really thought of it that way. Yeah, because I've never had the honor and the luck to go scuba diving. I've been snorkeling. That's about as close as I've got, But yeah, scuba. I mean, how do for folks who, I mean, there might be folks listening who've gone on holiday somewhere and they've paid for a scuba diving experience, stuff like that. I know my dad did that once. But yeah, tell us again about what got you into it, because we've heard a little bit of a story about what got you into nature and things like that. But why scuba dive? What was it about the ocean and your desire to don on all that gear and train, because you've got to have so much training, I imagine, to be like a scuba diver as well.
Yeah. It's definitely a long road, and I am only part way down it, but I can't even explain where my love for the ocean comes from. I was always a swimmer growing up, but
Hmm.
I've just felt this connection. I feel a little bit like Moana, in the first few scenes where she's like
Ah.
waddling towards the ocean. I feel like that's me sometimes. But yeah, when I went to university, it was a conversation I was having with my dad, and he was saying, "Well, you want to do marine biology? Why didn't you start scuba diving a few years ago?" And I just couldn't find a club for love nor money. And so when I
Uh,
went to university down in Portsmouth, joined the club there, and I was actually helping out a PhD student, Luke Helmer, on their oyster project in the Solent. And I hadn't even done my first try dive yet, and I was saying, "Oh, I'm really nervous. I'm not too sure if this is going to be for me. I panic quite a lot on land. I'm really worried I'll get myself into a situation underwater." And him and a lot of other people turned around and said, if you can dive in the UK where it is cold and the visibility is 3 meters if you're lucky, you can dive anywhere in the world. And
awesome.
yeah, it's been a very long journey, and there's with COVID and a lot of other setbacks, but I'm getting there, and yeah, I love it. I wish I could spend every single day diving. It's my favorite thing in the whole
Oh,
world.
that's yeah, and I love what you said a bit earlier about it feels like flying. And I do admit once I used to love swimming when I was a kid, and I used to love swimming underwater. I never could hold my breath very long though, because I grew up with asthma, and I actually took to playing the saxophone as one way of building my lung capacity, right? Um, and people have said to me, "Kit, you need to play your saxophone on the pod." No, no, I'm not going to subject you to that, folks. But and I get the peace and serenity of being underwater. And you mentioned about like when you're talking about the kidsy walks and like the way that they will, and the seabirds dive underwater and they give that sense of serenity and that sense of peace. I mean, um, is there anything in particular that you've seen in any of your scuba dives? I mean, you've already mentioned about the seabirds diving, where you were just, I don't know, you were in complete serenity, like with with
I
with your surroundings and nature. You're nodding as if so you have more than one example.
Oh, I have so many examples.
Okay.
The first one that sort of comes to mind was I went to the Red Sea in Egypt a few years ago, and I'd only just qualified. It was sort of my first summer. I was only an ocean diver, so I could only go to 20 meters. But the life in the Red Sea is incredible, and um, I think it was maybe my second dive there, and we're only at 10 meters swimming along this reef. My buddy points out this octopus sort of camouflaging into the wall, and we've obviously stopped, had a little look, and we're respectful. You don't go and poke the marine life, because also you don't want anything to poke you back and hurt you. So we're
Yep.
watching from a nice little distance. This octopus crawls out, and then out of nowhere, this gigantic triggerfish, and this thing must have been about 4 or 5 foot. It was massive, and you do not want to mess with them, because if you get in their territory, they're having none of it. They will chase you
Yep.
out, and they will chase you for the whole dive. But this
Wow.
massive
Wow.
triggerfish just came out of nowhere, and like one chomp just like started trying to like bite this octopus, and we were just sat there, and I was thinking, I feel like I'm in an episode of Blue Planet. Where are all the cameras? Like, this is the most amazing thing, and they just were not bothered by our presence at all. And it just reminded me that I'm a visitor to their world. They do not.
Yeah.
They don't even care that I'm there. They will continue their life, and I just get a little snapshot, a 45-minute window to experience what they're seeing. And
Mm,
I'm the biggest advocate. I think everyone should have the opportunity to go diving, because it really is so wonderful. And
yeah.
I'm not sitting here saying if you want to be a marine biologist, you have to scuba dive. I know many amazing marine biologists who work in labs and science communication
Yep.
and are so amazing. But for me, yeah, I want to spend every single second in the water.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wow, what a lovely story. And I've shout out to one of my ex-students who's been on this podcast, Karis Marianne, who's doing a PhD in marine biology up here in Norwich at the University of East Anglia. So she'll completely high five you through the digital internets for that.
Digital high
Um,
fives.
yeah, and you're the second guest actually this season who's talked about the Red Sea, because a few episodes ago I talked to Colleen Campbell, who is a PhD researcher in the Red Sea, looking at all the corals, and actually is living on campus or near campus, and is like right by the Red Sea. So
Oh, that's the dream.
yeah. So folks, if you want to link up what Amel's just said and Colleen with her work in the Red Sea, go and listen to that episode a few weeks back. That was quite interesting too, about her experiences in the Red Sea in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, I'm not gonna. I've got a few stories myself about just that kind of like. I'd say there was one time. I will say this one just very very quickly. In Montana, in Bozeman, Montana, where I'm lucky enough that my partner's family has a house out there for the family to go to. There's this pair of sandhill cranes that, because they mate for life, that frequent in the Bozeman summer, and they live there in the valley, in the glacial valley every summer. And I got up early. Oh yeah, that was the summer I took the high school kids there. So I got up early, and before all the kids got out of bed, I couldn't sleep. We had just arrived, and they were all still asleep because they were all knackered and jet lagged. And I just thought I couldn't sleep. So what I thought, I'd just go out for a little walk just around the house, around the valley and whatnot. And the sun was just coming up over the mountains and everything like that. And then I could hear that. It's not a very good impression of a sandhill crane, everybody. But anyway, and I could see the two sandhill cranes just flying like over past the house through the valley. And because I'd visited Montana a few years in a row, I knew that there were the same two sandhill cranes that have been frequent in the valley. And that peace, the quiet, the mountain, that really love hazy color of the sun rising behind the mountains. I just went,
That's so beautiful. Yeah.
You don't get that opportunity very often, to have that sharp intake of breath, to allow nature just to stop you in your track and give you that sharp intake of breath, and that sigh, like, all of the worries in life, my human worries, they pale into significance to the life of the beautiful experience of those two sandhill cranes, so. And I just think that I'm quite envious of you, to be fair, that you get that opportunity more often than I do. But if we all just stopped and observed, whatever we can, like you mentioned about the foxes and urban wildlife and stuff like that, we could all have that sense of awe, I think.
Oh, 100%. And I must just say, one of my favourite parts about my job, and you've also just done an amazing impression, is hearing everyone's bird calls. I love it. I think it's so funny. And you'll be with the most educated professionals, and they'll be telling you really interesting facts, and then you'll just have a grown adult going caw. It cracks me up every time. I think it's brilliant.
Well, I'm here to provide entertainment. I think I'll tell you what I'll do, because I have actually got the video, because I had a video of that moment. As I noticed that they were flying, I thought I got to catch this. So I did get a quick little video of it, and of the exact sound. I'll put that. I'll see if I can get that audio and then play it like after, like, my expression.
That's amazing.
Oh my god, it's going to be like, if I can find it for you, I'll play it after we finish recording. Hi folks, a chance for you to recharge your brew, but also a polite prod to remind you that it's so easy to support this podcast. Simply liking, sharing, rating and reviewing means that it will get on more people's radar. Also, there are a few links down in the description which may be of mutual benefit. Please do check them out. Right, we're going to play a little tiny game here, if that's okay with you.
Ooh, okay.
This will be kind of a slightly adjusted version of barking up the wrong tree, which is about figuring out which story is false and which story is fact. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to give you 4 facts about the ocean, and this is not putting you to the test, your knowledge to test. It's just a bit of fun for people listening to play along with, and whether they're fact or fiction, right? So it's a slightly different take on what I usually do for barking up the wrong tree. So here are 4. Are they fact or fictions, right? Okay. So this comes from Sea Turtle Camp News in 2017, and it's titled "The Ocean: Facts versus Fiction," which is quite nice. Right. Okay. So this is probably an easy one to start with. Is this fact or fiction? Is that the ocean is salty because of the animals inhabiting it?
Oh, you've started off with a really tricky one there. I haven't licked many dolphins, but I'm going to say that one's false.
Yeah, so it says here, this one is definitely fiction. We've heard of stories, myths, and legends about why the ocean is salty as it is, but the truth is there's only one reason from it, and that's from all the rocks being weathered and eroded from the land and the minerals washed out into the ocean during rainfall. There's a lot of chemistry involved in that process, but generally speaking, that's where all of the ocean's salinity comes from. So we were talking about the intersection between geology and marine biology there, weren't we?
I was going to say, I feel like you tricked me.
No, it was an easy one. Right. Okay. Fact or fiction? There are spots in the ocean that can get up to 700 degrees Fahrenheit. There are spots in the ocean get up to 700 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what, about 400 degrees Celsius?
I was going to say, what is that in
what is
not
that in
American?
What is that in not American?
Ooh.
371. So I wasn't much right about 400.
That seems very, very hot. But I'm not too sure. I'm gonna say fiction.
Okay. Right. So it's surprisingly enough. So it kind of forgives you here. Surprisingly enough, this is actually a fact. These temperatures are found at the bottom of ocean in hydrothermal vents, which are cracks in the ocean floor that heat the ocean water due to its proximity to magma under the Earth's crust. Perhaps even more surprisingly,
I forgot about the vents.
So, I mean, I can understand maybe the way it's been said. It's like the ocean itself it's actually heated by the hydrothermal vents. So, yeah. And they're actually quite a hot spot for biodiversity as well. Right. Okay, 2 more to go. So, fact or fiction? The ocean produces more oxygen than all of the trees on Earth combined.
This one's a fact. A fact. Shout out to my ocean doing bits for us. Oh, I slipped back into Essex there, sorry.
No, go for it. It's lovely to say that we're cultured on this podcast. I love saying that as an Essex person. So, yeah, this is totally fact. According to National Geographic, the oceans are responsible for producing nearly 2/3 of the Earth's oxygen supply. So when scientists like yourself talk about the importance of the health of our oceans, they aren't lying. Our lives literally depend on taking care of our oceans to keep them healthy. Right, there's one more. So this one is, you either know it or you don't, I guess. I actually didn't know this one. The Andes Mountains in South America are the biggest mountain range on Earth. So, well, why would they have this on an ocean? Fact or fiction, even though the Andes are on land? So what do you reckon? Is that fact or fiction? The Andes Mountains are the biggest mountain range on Earth.
I haven't actually been to too many mountains, so...
Ooh. Okay. Toss a coin. What do you think?
The longest, not the highest.
Yeah, definitely not the highest, yeah.
Let's go with fact.
Okay.
Sounds a guess.
Yeah, so I can understand why they have this one on this list. Actually, it says again, this is fiction. So while the Andes mountain range is the largest mountain range on dry land, there's an even bigger mountain range at the bottom of the ocean, and the Andes range is over 4,300 miles long, but the mid-ocean ridge in the Atlantic is nearly 10 times that size at a whopping 35,000 miles long. The craziest part, that actually accounts for almost a quarter of the Earth's surface. What?
Wow. See, if I was a former doing my hunting there, I think I would have got that one right. But
Yeah.
oh,
To me, the Wellerman comes to bring us sugar and tea. I don't know why that just popped into my head, but okay, that was completely random. Well, there you go. So, little facts about. But I think what that all shows, folks, is that whether which is a little silly game or it's fact or fiction, it just goes to show that the ocean is blooming interesting, bloody marvelous.
it's amazing. It always because I'm a Explorer Scout leader, and the kids are always fascinated, and I love telling the young people that we know more about space than we do about the ocean, and I hope I've convinced some of them to go into some STEM subjects. I'm really pushing it, but if I keep dropping ocean facts every now and then, I'm hoping it will stick with them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's I used to do that all the time when I still do now. You just drop little things in. You never know what sparks anybody, because half the time you get a person who comes up to you like used to teach. It's like, oh, so what made you decide you want to do this, that, or the other? And usually it's a single lesson or a single part of a lesson, or we watched this video and there was this quote from this one person, or this guest you got into the school to talk to us. Just that one moment, that one thing that was said, that just ticks something in the brain that you didn't really appreciate in the past. So yeah, I think we can't underestimate those little tiny moments. So keep doing it. I would say keep those subliminal messages getting in there.
Yeah. We're actually going for the Jamboree this year to North America, Oh, beat you to it then. And we let the kids choose the names of each patrol and each unit, and the rule was they had to name it after national park. So I suggested a few, and you've got Grand Canyon, you've got glaciers, thinking they would go along that route. The young people came back to us and said, actually, what we want to call our unit is Big Bend. So that's the park we're named after. So we all get to now walk around with that on the back of our t-shirts, but they chose it, and they love it. So
I tell you what, though, that is perfect example of young people's frame of minds, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, I probably would have done, because Yellowstone is the closest national park to Bozeman, so I probably would have gone for that. That's where I took the kids in 2012. But yeah, so Big Bend is in Texas, I believe. So did they have to do any research about it then? Do they even know it's in Texas?
I don't know if they know it's in Texas, but then I had to put a nice spin on it for the parents in our monthly newsletter. And so I was talking about how diverse the wildlife is in America, and talking about how diverse we are getting as scouting, and how it's really amazing that it's a safe space for the young people to discover who they are, and that this is possibly a once in a lifetime trip for some of them, and that it's really going to help them grow as people. So yeah, I think the parents definitely preferred that to just thinking we were letting them call it whatever they wanted.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And as speaking as someone who's run a field trip to the United States, that experience will change some of those kids' lives forever. The kids I took in 2012 to Yellowstone in the Bozeman area, they're mid to late 20s now, I think. But when I took them, they were like 12, 13, 14. And, I'm still in contact with many of them, and they still keep talking about it.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So you are going to have an absolute blast, and those kids are never, the only thing I'll just give you a word of advice though. The only thing of caution is that, it's very easy to lose yourself and get overexcited, and it's quite draining in a good way, because you're so pumped up, you're so excited, it's such an amazing experience, is that it can take quite a lot out of you. And I was absolutely exhausted by the end of that trip. But for good reasons. So
Yeah, I can
that's
imagine I'm
amazing.
going to be sleeping a lot when we come back. And
Yeah,
I,
well, I
I
don't
have to
blame you.
remind
Yeah.
myself that I am, in fact, a leader and responsible for some of these young
Yes.
people. And I'm not
Yes.
14 and I don't get to run around and play with sticks and jump in the river
Yeah.
as well. I've got a supervisor.
Yeah, but you'll have loads of fun with just watching them and seeing them like get out and stuff. So I'm really excited for you and your scout troop. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, very excited. Thank you.
Cool. So yeah, I was going to ask you about this upcoming thing for the spill the beans kind of section of this, but I've got so much I can. So let's see what we cover. So you love sports. You love your so you've tried netball, rounders, golf. Wow, roller skating, archery. You've even ran a half marathon over lockdown. Oh my goodness, where do we start? Nature through storytelling. Okay, so is that so? Explain to us what you mean by that. So what kind of stories do you like to listen to? You like to read, you tell, or is it listening to people tell stories?
Oh, it's a whole host of things. I think going back to my point that people can have connections with nature in whatever form. I think for a lot of the people I went to university with, and it was a question of why did you want to do marine biology, and so many people turned around and said Blue Planet. Blue Planet is
Mm,
for the first time that is what really sparked our interest in the ocean and
yeah,
was able to show us all this incredible wildlife. So I think storytelling is such a powerful tool. And you look back to the first human civilizations and paintings on caves of mammoths and all these incredible things. And just because now we post pictures of cows on Instagram, in
yeah,
my head that's the same thing. Just because we're not telling these stories around campfires or passing them down through generations,
yeah.
and
That's
we
true.
you
Yeah.
know we now I recently went to at the Natural History Museum. They have these explorer conferences for, again, underrepresented people of color, queer, all the different groups. And it's just a big night where the museum gets opened up, professionals showcase their work, and artists put on poetry talks and things like that.
Oh,
And it always makes me so emotional, some of the poems that get shared, and just how they are telling stories about their whole identities and the world around them in such a beautiful, articulate way that I could never come up with. But I just think it is so powerful. And yeah, whether it's
yeah.
art, bedtime stories. I'm sure you tell your kids so many nature-based stories,
Oh
and yeah,
yes.
yeah. I just think it's such a beautiful way to appreciate the nature around us, even if we're not realizing it.
Mm. Yeah, I'm a massive advocate of storytelling. I think it's how I used to it was my main preferred method of teaching. I think was through story, and I was very fortunate that not only did I teach geography, but I also taught drama as well. So I brought a lot of that into it. And it's the way that knowledge has traditionally been passed down. I think that's something that's we've lost as we've become further and further disconnected from nature and further and further disconnected from indigenous roots. Is we've lost this ability to tell meaningful stories that have huge impact, that pass knowledge down. But I think you're absolutely right. This is we were talking a bit earlier before we started recording, didn't we, about how actual social media can be a force for good, and it can access stories in a very accessible manner. And of course, the other thing we talked about, didn't we, before we started recording, was it can make greater visibility.
Mhm.
It can get stories out there which need to be told, who don't usually get told, or get marginalized or get suppressed.
Mhm.
So, and I know that's one thing that we're both exceptionally very, very passionate about when it comes to social media and stuff like that, is that we feel like there needs to be greater representation, especially in the field with science, with queer people like ourselves, and people of color like yourself. And yeah, so how important is clearly representation is obviously very important to you. I mean, it goes without saying, but just tell us a little bit about kind of like what that really means.
I think it is a difficult one, in the especially the social media side of things. I
Mm,
I think over lockdown and everything, I had to distance myself from a lot of platforms because it was just not good for my mental health.
Right. Yeah.
But then it's also the flip side of, well, I want to communicate with people, I want to network with people, stay in contact with friends, all of that. And I think, especially nowadays, we're told the world is our oyster. I've got to get the little oyster puns in there.
Yes.
And, to shout about our experiences from the rooftops, but that can be so overwhelming sometimes. So, it's just remembering that the whole world is not online, and to take a step back and maybe think sometimes before sending certain tweets. But I also do think, as you were saying, it is such a force of good, and just being able to see yourself represented in a field that when I go out to work and I go onto sites, I am, even though I'm light skinned, I am more often than not the darkest person in the room. And it can be so exhausting having to explain lived experiences, and then also feel like I have to uplift the voices of my community as well to people. And it can just be so draining. And so to be able to see that other people halfway across the world are doing the same thing, fighting the good fight, that actually there's people on your side, there's people out there.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that I want to come from being on Twitter or doing shows like this, or just getting my name, my voice out there, is that if there is one young person who was like me, thinking, well, everyone on this course doesn't look like me, no one else here is queer, I seem to be the odd one out, this I don't think this is a career for me. I just want to let people know that we're here, we're fighting, we want to be heard, and we accept you, and we're going to make space for you, and the industry is changing, and we need your help in the fight. So there's I think social media can be a really good thing. And visibility is so important. So
it really is. And I do have privileges, such as being white, such as being now, middle class and educated to a degree. And I just feel that for me personally, I think the greater privilege that you have, or the greater privileges that you have a greater responsibility to make sure that you're paying that privilege forward to those. So, and as we said before, I haven't got you on the podcast because you're a queer person of color. I've got you on the podcast because you are a marine biologist who has a love for the planet like I do. And, yes, we have certain identities in that respect, but core to our being is the love of our lives, which is the natural planet and the natural world. And just us going about our business while being true to who we are I think is the absolute best gift I think that either of us can give to this planet, really.
100%. And I think as well, there's so many more interesting things that make me a person. As you say, my love for nature, the sports
your scuba
I play,
diving,
the stories I tell. These are all things.
Puns.
These are all things that I think make me before the fact that I'm non-binary, or the color of my skin. And I think we focus far too much on that as a society. And I mean, I think it's quite a scary time, and I don't want to delve into it too much, but the stuff that the government is coming out every single day, it feels like just another little bit of our communities are getting attacked and chipped away at until there's going to be nothing left. And we need to use our voices. They're a very powerful tool, and I think I'm going to mess up his name now. I've always said it wrong. Arnold
Schwarzenegger.
There we go. He just.
Oh, you're talking about that video.
Yeah, and I think that was such a powerful video. If you haven't seen it yet, I think it's only like 12 minutes long, but he's talking about, how he had to unlearn that generational hate, and that he had to work out his mind like he would work out his body to actually put in the effort to dismantle all these ideas that he'd grown up believing. And if he can do it, then it's proof that everyone can do it. And I think it is just taking a second to look at the world around you and realize there's so many bigger things going on than firing off another angry reply on social media. Like, go look at the birds, go
Yeah.
put your feet in the ocean and feel the sand between your toes, and then all
Yeah.
of these thoughts will disappear.
Absolutely. And, it goes to show that people just listening to you speak for the last 40 or so minutes tell like the amount of passion and joy you get from your work as a marine biologist and things like that. And that is what brings, that's what that joy transfers, and it coalesces with other people's, and you find common ground in those. And the same with me, when people get me talking about maps or climate change or anything to do with geography, especially maps. I see a map, I'm like, map. It's like I'm like Forky off of Toy Story. Like when he goes, he sees a trash can, he's drawing. He goes, trash. I'm maps. So
my partner also loves maps. So I must admit, I am actually sat next to a giant map that used to be hanging in my room, but we've recently moved house, so we don't have a home for it. But yeah, my partner has dragged me into every possible map store we can ever find, wherever we go, and yeah, always brings maps back from different country and has quite possibly thousands of Ordnance Survey's maps. So you are not alone in that one.
I'm just looking at my shelves with all my Ordnance Survey maps. I like your part already. I like them very much. Well, I mean, we've fortunately got to bring this to an end, which is a big shame. But we got to move on to the one last thing, which is we are all geographers, because I'm going to link you now to our previous guest. So last week we spoke to Anne-Marie Organ, a wonderful person. She is she describes herself as an inclusive Christian, but she has a geography degree, which is really interesting. We talked about like urban landscapes and how she has rural phobia. Really do check that episode. But she's also a massive Star Trek fan, like I am. And the reason why, wait, okay, right, folks, you only can hear us, you can't see us, but yeah, you should have seen Emil's face. Right, okay, so this might actually suit you perfectly then, right? She's given you a word or a phrase that you've got to speak about for 30 seconds, right? And usually what I ask is for the person to try and make some geographical environmental link with this word, right? You can probably guess what I'm going to say. She has said that she wants you to speak about Star Trek for 30 seconds.
Okay, easy.
You
about anything.
So Anne-Marie, she thought she was gonna trip you up. She thought, the next person is going to be as massive Trekkie like me and you, Kit, are they? I was like, well, I don't know. And then you were just like, yeah. Right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to have this in front of me.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
I've got my giant Enterprise D model, and I'm going to have that out in front of me while Emil talks to you all for 30 seconds about Star Trek. So whenever you're ready, and then I'll let you know when you've got 5 seconds left. So off you go.
Okay, so I have to link Star Trek back to the environment. So Star Trek, obviously all about exploring space and new planets and meeting new races and flying among the stars. And I've watched it with my dad growing up, and I always used to think, oh, one day I'd love to get a job on the Enterprise, and obviously realise that can't come true. But yeah, I feel like my job now, in a very small sense, is still discovering new things, exploring new science, and oh my god, it's running out of time already, and there's so many new species, and we just oh my god, that was very stressful. Was not prepared, was not expecting Star Trek to come up.
I know, but you did such a great job, and as soon as you said exploration, I was like, oh yeah, that's it. You could have just went exploration, job done. But, do you know what I just thought of actually? But do you know what is that? I'll show you where it is. So, folks, I'm going to point. I'll describe this to you physically. So, if you're if you don't care about Star Trek, you're like, I'm switched off. You can switch off now if you want, but no, actually, don't, because Emil's going to tell you where you can get in contact with them, and you can follow them on Twitter. So, hold on for a moment. Indulge us for a moment. Right. Okay. So, I'm holding up the Enterprise D in plan view, right, and I'm pointing roughly. There is actually a space here according to the technical specifications written by Mike Okuda. So right here, do you know there actually are sea creatures who have a base operations in this part of the Enterprise? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I didn't know it was that specific bit.
Yeah, it's somewhere around here. Yeah. So
Ooh.
this is cetacean operations.
Oh, that's
Because
amazing.
actually, according to the technical manual, the Star Trek technical manual,
Mm.
they actually have dolphins on board to help navigate.
There we go.
Yeah.
I always thought for a long time as well I was going to be like Bones and I was going to become a doctor. or, or potentially an engineer like Scotty, but
Yep.
that didn't work out. But yeah, I recently rewatched some of the older series with my dad, and yeah, still so much love for them, and yeah, really
Damn it,
amazing
Jim!
show.
I'm a marine biologist, not a doctor. I got that wrong way around, but there you go. Yeah, so but it's true. And actually there was one episode of Star Trek Next Generation where Geordie mentions about. Have you seen the dolphins yet? So that's the one canon time on Star Trek Next Generation where they actually mention there are dolphins. But then they were solidified in canon, folks, in Star Trek Lower Decks, where no spoilers, but they really did solidify the fact that there is cetacean observations. Sorry, Sean Ferrick from Trek Culture. That's Sean Ferrick's fault from Trek Culture that I said cetacean observations instead of cetacean operations. But there actually are dolphins on starships. Anyway, so how cool is that? So there you go. You
That's
still
so cool.
potentially have a future in the stars with your marine biology.
I love that. I love that.
All right. Okay, we've really gone random now. So before I forget, you get to come up with a single word, or if it's you can cheat if it's something like Star Trek, that's fine. But you can come up with a single word for our guest for next time. Do you have something on the top of your head that you like to use?
Sticking with the slightly nerdy space theme, we'll go Doctor Who.
Doctor Who. Okay, this is getting really, really. I think Andy Placides, host of the Great Derelict podcast. This is your doing, isn't it? This is your doing. Right. So Doctor Who. So please tell us, Amel, where we can find you, or because you have a Twitter profile, and how people. Because you sound you definitely are an awesome human being, not just you sound one. And I know that people are going to want to connect with you. So how can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. I'm sure Kit can put the links in the bios, however you do the links on these things. Yeah, that is my main form of social media. I'm also on LinkedIn under the name Amelia Hursham. But yeah, feel free to DM me on Twitter, and yeah, I'm more than happy to provide email addresses and things like that. So yeah,
awesome. Yep,
looking forward to hearing from you all.
Yeah, and you'll have it's fine. And you could also go. The other thing I always fail to mention is that if you go, folks, to Coffee Jog Pod Twitter account, there is a public list on that Twitter account which has all of the podcast guests. So you'll be able to find Amel's Twitter handle in that list. So that also works too, and all the other previous guests.
Brilliant.
Right. Any shout outs to finish off? You shouted out to Luke, to your dad, to your late nan, bless her heart. Anyone else you'd like to give a shout out to?
Oh, since she sat in the room next sorry, can't speak suddenly at the end of this. Since she sat in the room next door, I'm gonna have to shout out to my sister Sophia, who is probably cuddling with the cat Felix, and also to my partner Nina, who is in Iceland with their mum at the moment. So I hope you have a lovely holiday.
Oh, hi Nina. You're probably back home when you're listening to this, but okay. And so hi Sophie, and of course Felix. Yeah, who can forget Felix?
Who can forget him?
Who can forget
the
Felix?
world's best boy.
Well, this has been so much fun. I mean, people will know just by our laughter and our joy and our geekiness and our complete randomness that this was so much fun. Thank you so much. I've had such a blast.
Thank you for having me. This is my first proper podcast experience, so I have had a blast. Thank you for making me feel so welcome. You are an amazing host, so another shout out to you. And yeah, my face hurts from smiling and laughing now, so definitely a very good way to spend an evening.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope you had fun. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe so more stories and experiences can drop into your favourite podcast app. If you fancy being a guest or have any feedback, follow us on Twitter at coffeegeogpod and send us a DM. Or you could email coffeeandgeog@geogramblings.com. Until next time, keep geogging.